Have you ever read something that feels like two completely different stories rolled into one? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today with Isaiah chapter 9. It's this incredible prophecy that gives us a vision of a brilliant, world-changing light, and on the flip side, an all-consuming fire.
So you've got this huge contrast, right? An age of darkness, but then a vision of light and fire. It begs the question, how can a single prophecy hold both this massive promise of hope and at the same time such a severe warning? It really unfolds like a two-act play, and we're going to walk through both.
Okay, so before we can even begin to understand the light and the fire, we have to get the backstory. I mean, to really feel the weight of this prophecy, you have to know what was going on at the time. Context here is absolutely everything.
Yeah, this was not a time of peace and quiet. We're talking about the 8th century BCE, and it was pure chaos. You've got the Syro-Ephraimite War kicking off, and the northern kingdom of Israel, it's basically on the brink of total collapse. The Assyrian Empire, this absolute superpower, is breathing down their necks. The regions of Zebulun and Naphtali, they're the first to get hit, and they get hit hard. This is the deep, dark backdrop for everything Isaiah is about to say.
But here is where it gets wild. Right in the middle of all this gloom and despair, this very real, historical darkness, the prophet just flips the script. He introduces this radical, almost unbelievable promise of hope.
And when Isaiah says the people were walking in darkness, he's not just talking about it being cloudy outside. The Hebrew word here is hasheka. It's so much deeper than that. It's painting a picture of total moral and spiritual blindness, of a people lost, in peril, living in what's literally called the shadow of death. It's heavy stuff. And that's the core contrast, right there. The darkness is a human problem. It's blindness, gloom, peril, all that. But the great light, that's not something they can create on their own. It's a divine gift. It's an intervention designed to completely shatter that darkness and bring life and salvation.
So how does this victory play out? Isaiah gives us two incredible symbols. First, imagine a heavy wooden yoke on someone's shoulders, a symbol of oppression. That yoke gets shattered. This means freedom, both politically and spiritually. And second, he talks about burning bloodied battle gear. Think about that. It's not just a ceasefire, it's a sign that war itself is over. For good. We're talking about a promise of total, lasting peace.
Okay, so this brings us to the absolute core of the prophecy, the part that everyone knows, even if they don't realize it's from here. This is the how. How is this great light actually going to show up?
It all centers on a promised ruler, and the language is so precise. For unto us a child is born. That points straight to his humanity. But then it says, unto us a son is given, and that hints at something more, a divine origin. And the government, it's going to rest right on his shoulders. That's a powerful image of his complete authority.
Then he gets these 4 incredible names. And you got to understand, these aren't just fancy titles. This is his resume. Wonderful Counselor, an amazing, wise God. The Mighty God. I mean, that's a divine warrior. The only one who could actually bring about that total victory we were talking about. The everlasting Father, the eternal source of everything. And the Prince of Peace, the one who establishes shalom, that deep, all-encompassing peace. Wow.
Okay, so the hope is at an all-time high, right? A divine king, everlasting peace, it's incredible. And then, bam! The chapter just slams on the brakes. We get yanked from this glorious future right back into the grim, messy present of the northern kingdom.
So now, the tone shifts completely from hope to judgment. And what's the first charge? Pride. After getting hit by their enemies, the people of Israel don't repent. They don't turn to God. Instead, they basically say, "Oh yeah? Watch this." They defiantly vow to rebuild bigger and better, swapping out cheap bricks for fancy stone and flimsy sycamore for strong cedars. It's the ultimate display of self-reliance, completely ignoring God.
And because of that pride, we hear this haunting line for the first time. It's a refrain that's going to repeat, telling us that this is far from over. God's hand of judgment is still stretched out.
Next up, the prophecy goes after the leaders. It talks about the head and the tail, that's the elders and the false prophets. They're the ones being blamed for leading the entire nation down the wrong path. The very people who should be guiding them back to God are actually the source of the rot. It's a top-down problem.
And there it is again, that chilling refrain. For all this, his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. The message is clear. The people aren't changing their ways, so the judgment isn't stopping either.
in the final charge is maybe the most terrifying. Their own wickedness is described as a fire. It's not an outside army anymore. Their sin has become this raging fire that's just consuming their society from the inside out. We're talking total chaos, social breakdown, even civil war. The text literally says no one spares his brother. They're devouring each other. And one last time, that powerful, grim refrain comes back to hammer the point home. The cycle of judgment isn't stopping because the cycle of sin isn't stopping. It's a really bleak picture.
So that leaves us with this huge question, right? How in the world do you put these two halves together? You've got this beautiful promise of a world-saving light, and then this terrifying reality of a fire of judgment. How do they exist in the same chapter?
Well, when you boil it all down, the chapter leaves us with some really powerful lessons. 1, that grace can show up in the absolute darkest of places. 2, that real justice and peace ultimately come from that promised child king. 3, that pride and sin, when they're left unchecked, have very real, very severe consequences. And maybe most importantly, that even when things look like they're in total ruin, that promise of light is still there for those who hold on to faith.
You know, it's amazing how a 2,700-year-old text can feel so relevant. Isaiah 9 really challenges us today with some big questions about leadership, hope, and accountability. It forces us to ask ourselves, in our own lives, in our own world, what are the consequences of our actions? And when things get dark, where are we looking for that light?